Welcome into the latest edition of ESPN FC. I'm Dan Thomas. Today in the Champions League was all about Group H. We'll talk about Leipzig's win against PSG in a moment, but we'll start in Turkey, where Istanbul Basaksehir beat Manchester United by 2-1 to register their first ever victory, their first ever goal in the history of the group stages of the competition. Shaka, Hislop, Stewart, Robson and Craig Burley with us. Craig, they deserve the win as well.
You know, our boss, when I said to our boss today, I said, what games do you want me to watch? And he says, Leipzig, PSG. I thought, okay, yeah. And can you watch Man United against that team in Istanbul, whose second name's very difficult to pronounce? And I thought, why the hell does he want me to watch that game? He must think that United are going to be the gift that keep on giving. And he was right. He was absolutely right, because once again, you know, United make the headlines for all the wrong reasons. And what did Solskjaer say after the debacle against Arsenal, that woeful performance? He said, well, you know, we came out and we weren't really at it and there was no tempo to a game. And, well, here's a repeat first 45 minutes of the same performance with unable to do the basics against a much poorer side. And then the 2 goals that they gave away, guys, on top of that. I mean, that's not even schoolboy stuff. And we're talking about Man United here. So, listen, Dan, the clock is ticking now. Yeah. 4 defeats in 7 games with Everton at the weekend. The clock is ticking big time. If he loses on Saturday, how the hell do you go to your board and your shareholders and your supporters and say, 5 defeats in 8 games? How's that for Man United? That ain't good enough if that happens at the weekend. Let's
talk about that first goal, Robbo, because it was an indictment on everything that's wrong with Manchester United at the moment. Everyone was up as if it was the 95th minute. It was crazy. No one was back marking. Demba Ba picks up the ball, goes up the other end and scores. As Craig says, you wouldn't see that at a schoolboy level.
Well, when you've got a set play, you send your centre-halves up, you get people forward, you always have 2 back. If they've got 1 centre-forward, you usually have 2 back. 1 marking behind, 1 marking in front. Well, Matic was marking in front, but there was nobody actually behind. They completely sort of didn't even know he was there at that point. I think Wan-Bissaka also made a run forward at the wrong time, so just left it wide open. But it was an extraordinary goal, and it just shows a lack of organisation and lack of leadership on the field as well, because when the centre-halves go up for the corner, they should be making sure it's all sorted out the back. The goalkeeper, no De Gea, it was Henderson in goal. He's got to be telling people in front of him, you know, you've got to get back, goal side, one goal side, one the other side of him, so he can't get the ball into his feet. It's a lack of organisation, a lack of discipline, and a lack of leadership.
Who takes the blame overall? Robert wants to blame the goalkeeper, Shaka.
I think it's down to Matic and Ole Gunnar Solskjaer, in all honesty. Listen, it's on Wan-Bissaka's side, but he's involved in the set piece. Not just once with a given goal, but twice. He gets it back. And if the right back gets involved, if Wan-Bissaka is actually supposed to be sitting a little bit deeper, and he gets involved in the play, surely you work it out on the training ground, who's supposed to drop in place of him? Or to Robbo's point, you have some kind of leadership on the field to say, well, hold on, Wan-Bissaka's involved. I've got to drop inside here, or he picks somebody else to drop in. But nobody does. And then Matic gets caught ball watching. Demba Ba realizes that and just drifts off the back of him, which, I mean, that wasn't the only time it happened in the game. He was doing that all game long, just peeling off centre-backs into acres of space. And a long clearance, and he's in. Listen, I understand the point Rob was making that Henderson should have called somebody back as well, but I sympathise. Everybody goes a long way up. You're probably screaming your head off, you know, whether anybody is paying you any mind or not. I just feel that in terms of initial blame, it has to be Matic, and it has to be Ole Gunnar Solskjaer on the sidelines for not having his organisation better prepared than that.
Dan, let's get to the crux of this, right? Harry Maguire was out this week after the Arsenal game, smarting at the criticism from some pundits about leadership. Well, they haven't got any, right? So he can come out and, you know, raise his head above the parapet and tell all the nonsense he wants. There's no leadership, right? Secondly, at no point at this level of football, and we're talking about elite level players, some of them anyway, or they should be playing for that club. should get themselves in that position. But if these players are too dumb to understand that, and it seems some of them at Man United are, then there is no excuse for Mike Phelan and Ole Gunnar Solskjaer not to have that sorted. There is an excuse if you're playing in the Bernabeu in front of 100,000, or the Nou Camp, or Anfield, or even Old Trafford, when there's a full house and the atmosphere's hot, and sometimes, and we know as players, you can't hear everything. There's nobody at the grounds. There's a handful of people. It's not difficult to get that message on quickly, because you can't say, oh, they never heard us, because you could whisper at these grounds and they can hear you. So if the players are not clever enough to be able to sort it, then what the hell are the coaching staff doing? What are they looking at? There's no excuse to get onto these players with no crowd that they're not bright enough, smart enough, and have the football intellect in the first half of a Champions League game, which, by the way, the group's now wide open, to get yourself in a good position. So it boils down to thick players and poor coaching.
Those backing Solskjaer, how concerned would you be, as Shaka mentioned, Robbo, in that opening first half, Demba Ba looked world class and no one seemed to be doing anything about it?
Yeah, the centre-halves didn't read it well enough. Well, not so much Harry Maguire, because he was on the other side, but he played off Tuanzebe. And Tuanzebe, there was one incident where the goalkeeper was just about to kick the ball. You can see Demba Ba pointing exactly where he wanted. He kept on moving his head, saying, stick it in behind Tuanzebe. Tuanzebe's looking at him, and the ball still got played over the top, and he got there. You know, Demba Ba, he's 35, he's struggling to run, so it's a real problem. But they weren't just the only problems at Manchester United. Now, that's the defensive side of it. The attacking side was wrong as well. When you look at the one thing you do as a coach, when you go into any club or you're working on the team shape, how are we going to get the ball from back to front? What's our game plan? If the opposition squeeze up, let's stick it in behind. If they're compact, we're going to have to go in behind. I'm not sure that Marcus Rashford and Martial made one run in behind when somebody had time on the ball. They wanted to come short, not just receive with the ball with their back to play. They want to come short back into midfield. Now, who's telling them, no, that's not the right thing to do? We've got to turn the opposition round to start with. Then we're going to get room to play. Then we can get Bruno Fernandes in the game. Then we can get Mata in the game. But to start with, we've got to turn the opposition round. And Marcus Rashford, unless the game is open, doesn't make those runs. Martial, unless the game is open, they're playing counter-attacking football, he doesn't make those runs either. That's a lack of game knowledge and a lack of understanding from the coach to get them to do it.
Where was the response in the second half, Shaq?
I don't know. That for me was the most confusing thing, and I think that speaks to exactly what Robbo was talking about in terms of a lack of preparation, a lack of any offensive game plan. Given how the half ended, with Martial scoring, and you feel team talks, the halftime team talks to come, there would have been, you know, a lot of finger pointing, a lot of blame around the two goals. But all of a sudden you're back in the game, and now momentum is in your favour. You've dominated possession in the first 45, so surely now it's an opportunity for you to push on. Not only that, you call on the likes of Greenwood, of Cavani, Pogba coming off the bench. I know he's sitting a little bit deeper. You have all the cards in the pack, certainly in terms of talent between the two, and yet still in the second 45. The only real scare that Istanbul had came in the 93rd minute. A goal line clearance of what would have been an own goal. That's all that Manchester United had to speak about in terms of any kind of offensive threat. And again, that for me, and I don't mean to be picking on Ole Gunnar Solskjaer here, but when you have that kind of starting 11, when you have that kind of firepower coming off the bench, and your only shy goal comes from an Istanbul header, then that speaks to a failure on your part.
It goes back to the fact that sorry, Rob, I've been knocking this nail in the head with the hammer for weeks and weeks and maybe months now, that when United play sides that sit deep and are weaker on paper, this is what we get, generally. Not all the time, but generally. When this United side play City, and we've seen it in the last 12 months or so, when they play the PSGs of this world and others who come at them, who dominate them, who have better players, the plan is, and has been all along, to sit in and be defensive and hit on the counter-attack with pace. But we don't play these teams, you know, twice a week. Quite often we play teams that are weaker and more defensive, and there is no plan. There is no plan. Even when you look at Arsenal with Arteta, a new coach, he'll drop a midfielder into the back four, and he'll push the full back into the wide position. He'll drop the winger in narrow. They're trying different things. He's trying different things. He's a new coach. Solskjaer's not a new coach. People need to remember this. He's been in management over 10 years, a decade, right? He's not new. He's not new to this game. He was in Norway and he was at Cardiff, got sacked, went back, came in as interim coach. Not new to this game. There's no plan for United unless they're playing the better teams, which even against RB Leipzig, a better team. They sat in, they were outplayed, and then they hit on the counter-attack. RB Leipzig capitulated. That's the plan. That is the United plan. When they play poorer teams, no space in behind, generally they've struggled. And that's a problem.
You just have to look at the shape of the midfield as well. I'm not quite sure what he wanted Bruno Fernandes and Mata to do. He's got Matic and Donny van der Beek. Donny van der Beek is at his best when he's playing further forward and making runs into the box. He's playing as a holding midfield player and didn't look that comfortable after the first 10-15 minutes. You've got Juan Mata playing out on the right-hand side, not particularly happy because he's never going to go past anybody. He's going to have to come in on his left foot. And Bruno Fernandes was going and playing alongside him at times. So I'm not sure what the shape of the midfield was. And if you have no shape when you've got the ball, you have very little shape when you lose it because you're out of shape, and that's when the opposition can counter-attack. And that's what happened today.
Dan, we're 8 games into the season come the end of the weekend. Premier League and domestic. What would that be? 4 or 5 league games, whatever it is. If he walks out of Goodison on Saturday, I think it is, with another defeat, where do we go? Where does Ed Woodward go? Where do the board go? What do the supporters say? Is that, 5 defeats in 8 games for anybody. A struggling, mediocre team would have the manager in the hot seat. And that's how big this is for him. And what he has shown, though, and what his team have shown, and it has spared them, and we've touched on this, is that when he's been up against it severely, and he is already, they've got a result. Can that continue at the weekend? Who knows? Because Everton started well, but they've hit the buffers a little bit. But who knows? But we're so short into the season. It's only just started, but already it's coming home to bear for him and the club that this could all be going in the wrong direction. And I think the weekend, Dan, it could come to a head. I really do. How long do you let it go? How long do you let it go if they lose at Everton at the weekend?
But even if they don't, even if they get a result against Everton, Robbo, there's absolutely no consistency in this side, which has kind of been epitomised of what's happened over the last 3 or 4 weeks, which kind of leads to what you were saying, that there doesn't seem to be a plan.
The best managers, when you look at their team, without even knowing the players, you say, well, that's a Jose Mourinho team, or that's an Alex Ferguson team, because they've played to a certain pattern. They've got patterns of play that they've been working on in training. They turn the opposition round to start with, then they buy themselves space in midfield to play. So you know what they're trying to do, and they do it very well. When I watch Manchester United, I've seen them now for a year and a half with Ole Gunnar Solskjaer, or a year, and I keep seeing the same things. How are they going to get the ball into those front players? Because they keep coming into spaces where there is no space, so the midfield players have to go square and back. So that's why they're playing so slowly, because the front players aren't making any runs. But why isn't the coach sorting that out? Why isn't he getting the right game plan? In the Arsenal game and tonight, when the ball changes hand, Manchester United's effort to win it back was really poor. And I go with the front two again. It starts with the front two. If they lose possession, Rashford and Martial today, when they lost possession, the ball might have only been 2 or 3 yards away from them. There was no effort to try and win it back again. And so the Istanbul Basaksehir, I think I said it right, could then play forward and counter-attack.
Robbo, Craig, thank you very much. Thank you, Shaka. Robbo and Craig, stay with me. If you want more from Shaka, download the podcast. He's with Robbo on Extra Time answering your questions.
Well, thank you very much for watching ESPN on YouTube. For more sports highlights and analysis, be sure to download the ESPN app. And for live streaming, premium content, and let's not forget as well, ESPN FC 7 days a week. Subscribe to ESPN Plus.